technologies, specifically on Project Fugu and Progressive Web App. I'm also the organizer for GDG San Jose, an ambassador at Women Tech Makers. So here's my Linktree QR code, which I will also be posting at the end too. And every top right slide would have my LinkedIn handle. So fun fact about me is I love coffee. If you guys are around the Bay Area, please, let's catch up. And okay, today the agenda, I split it into two parts. This is going to be, we'll start off with the Progressive Web App. We'll talk about the pillars of Progressive Web App. We'll talk about service worker, manifest, etc. And then we'll see how to create a Progressive Web App to begin with. Then we'll talk about Flutter, very basics of Flutter, but I wanted to mention here about Flutter Web, so that's why I'm doing this. And then we'll build and deploy in Firebase. I will show you show the demo at the end of this session, though. So little requirement: if you should have some programming language. I'm not going to be talking about what is a class, what is an interface and stuff like that. So I expect you to have some programming language, and you should have developed something on web. And it's good to have, if you have hosted somewhere other than Firebase, helps too, at least as a GitHub pages. Otherwise, we can walk you through this. And finally, you are aware of, you have used IDE, either how Renuka showed as Zap. I'll be showing it in Dartpad, and a command line interface too. So to just begin with, this is a fundamental three-tier architecture of web where you have 3 layers, and all the communication goes through a middle layer, and it's all linear. So you have the UI, logic, and the data, right? So what are progressive web apps? These are also web applications, but they use specific technologies and standard patterns. So when you develop a progressive web app, they look and feel like a native app. Note that I'm saying native and not mobile here. Native could be desktop or mobile. So I call it the pillars of progressive web app. There are 4 of them, which makes it a main, to make it a progressive web app. These are 4 essential things that a progressive web app should contain. First is the service workers, which is a heartbeat of a progressive web app. And then it should be served on a secure portal. Then it should be responsive, and you will also have something called as app manifest. Okay, so here is your regular web application. If you take it out, you will have some index.html, then you will have some JavaScript file. When you have a progressive web app, you will have something called as an app manifest, and you would also have a service worker, right? So how does service worker work, right? In a regular web page where JavaScript runs as a single thread. However, if you have a service worker, it runs on a separate thread, and it understands that it acts as a network proxy. So first off, to have a service worker, you need to register them. Once you have to, inside of your app.js, you have to make sure that you register for it. For example, you are using this function. I don't know whether my pointer is working. If you can see, you're using a navigator, and then you are trying to register for it. It'll look for this particular method, right? And in Flutter, I'll show you exactly where it gets it just gets generated as a service worker. So you have it in the app.js. And like I said, for a service worker, what does it do? The main features are it'll keep listening to what the user does. So it has a background sync that constantly runs, and it listens to all the fetch API requests, and it'll load content. It has to load content offline, and it can also support push notification. So these are the main features of service workers. And how do you know that you have service worker in your application? So what you got to do is you go to Chrome, you go to the DevTools, and then inside the application tab, you would see service worker. And if you see it is it shows you the source of the file, and it also shows you something, what is the status, and then it shows push, sync, update cycle, and understand that service worker goes through a life cycle. So I'm not going to be talking about everything, but I have resources that I can point you to. And also when I said that it also contains cache, right? So it will cache here, and that's how it can load content offline. So now moving on to the next pillar, I forgot to tell you that I'm not going to be talking about how to serve it on an HTTPS and how to build a responsive web application, because these are all, the responsive design is the topic by itself. So I'm pretty sure that if you have built something, you would know how to make it responsive as well. So I'm just focusing on app manifest and service worker. So app manifest is nothing but a JSON file. It'll let you know how your browser should look and behave when a progressive web app is installed. And it can also contain other details like name, icons, etc. So to just give you the visuals, here is an app which has a theme color, icons, name, the background color of the application. And note that you would have the index inside your index.html. You will have to add a link tag as a link tag for the manifest. And this is how your manifest will look like. Very similar to package.json, but then understand that it has specific icons and stuff like that. So what do you mean? When we say that we are building a progressive web app, you need to make sure that they are installable, they're capable, they're reliable, and anybody who is having a low connectivity, low network, they are able to still install and they can still access the application, right? So what does it support? It supports, like I said, offline push notification. There are a lot more APIs that can be used with progressive web app. There's file handling API that you could use, background fetch, and there is background sync. And what does progressive web application solve, right? On the left, you see native application. You have to go to a store, find the app inside the store, download and wait. And then once you install it, it's going to ask for user permission, and then you start using your application, right, in a mobile. So what happens if you do this, and every single time there's an app update, you have to go to the store again and then update it, right? So in a progressive web app, you don't need to do all those things. You just, like, it's a web application. You can just click in the browser of your any device that you're using and then start using the app right away. Or it gives you an option for installing this. So when you install it, the user is able to access the app like a native app. So here's an example of a progressive web app. If this is on a browser, it's on photos.google.com. If you go see here, there's a small icon at the top which says install. This is a potential progressive web app, right? And then another one is an example is Tinder. So if on the left-hand side, if you see, it's a web app inside a browser because it has an address bar, right? And then in the middle, it is a native application without the address bar. And then a progressive web app would contain an address bar, and also it will prompt you. It will prompt to ask, hey, do you want to install this add it to your home screen, right? So once you do that, it gets automatically. Note that you don't have to go back and update the application every single time. It just automatically does it when the user opens the app. Service worker listens to those fetch requests and then updates the app right away. So how do you know that you have built a progressive web app? How do you validate it, right? So it's again, like I said, it's a web application, right? So there is a extension, Chrome extension called a Lighthouse. Once you have the service worker app manifest and you have made your application responsive and you have served it on a secure portal, then you can go ahead and run this extension on Chrome, and it'll check for certain, it'll run an audit of your web page. And then it'll check whether, hey, whether it's installable, whether it's optimized, and it looks for example, it does check for whether you have a manifest, right? And inside the manifest, are these icons are present? Are these icons are maskable? You have a lot of information about this in the documentation, which you can go ahead and check it out in Progressive Web App, Google's Progressive Web App pages. So it runs an audit. Once you're done, it gives you a green check. This is your this is your thumbs up from Lighthouse that, hey, yours is validated for Progressive Web App. We'll see a demo in a minute. Just bear with me. So now we had this earlier. This was a web architecture. When you call it Progressive Web App, there is a service worker which constantly keeps going and it keeps syncing, right? So this is how your Progressive Web App architecture changes. So what are the pros and cons, right? Any tool or any technology comes with its own pros and cons. The pros are any web developer, any JavaScript developers can develop now a native application, and they are not at the mercy of any stores. And there are a lot of websites like Twitter, Starbucks, Alibaba. They've all found that there's higher engagement. And like I said, everything comes with drawbacks too. So it is not supported by all browsers. So if you're using Safari or on an iOS device, it is, and most of them do. Most of the APIs are not supported. And this technology takes time to adapt. It's been around from, it has been around from 2015, but still it takes time to adapt. People are so used to native applications so far. And because there's a background sync that goes on, your battery life of your mobile application might, it might lose, the battery life could go and toss. So there are ways to, there's a workaround for this. Instead of background sync API and how much you're caching, you could use a background fetch API. There are a couple of APIs that you can use, and based on that, you can make sure that you don't cache too many on the browser side. So that's one thing. And any questions so far? Because I'm going to switch gears to Flutter. Before we do that, I want to take any questions. If there's anything that's not there, I can move around, and then we can at the end. Okay, go ahead.
So Deepa, I have like one question. So is that PWA is like an actual web app, or like what is the difference between the a web app and PWA? What is?
I will show you in a moment. It's like,
okay. Thank you.
I will show you when I show you the demo, you will understand. So, like I showed you, I'm not too sure if you have visited some pages like Microsoft Outlook on the web. If you go to open it on your desktop, it'll show you on the browser. It'll show you a small icon. So that when you see that, not every application would have it, but when you are making your web app to a Progressive Web App, that would be there.
Okay.
Okay. If there's nothing here, I'm going to be showing you a demo in a moment. The trickiest part is Flutter Web is different from that of a regular thing. So that's one thing that I wanted to show here. So we'll move on. We talked about Progressive Web App. Now we'll move on to Flutter. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you know the architecture, but we'll see how it is different for web, and we'll see how we can build, and I'll show you the demo in a moment. So Flutter, as you all know, is a UI toolkit that allows you to build beautiful applications on iOS, Android, web. Now it's also for other like macOS, Linux, etc. So you build these applications using a language called Dart. And it supports, like I said, it supports all these things: mobile, web, desktop, and embedded too. So before I could start off, I just want you to understand, whenever we create web application, we can create it in two ways. We can paint pixels on the web page in two ways. The traditional one is the one that we always did, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And it's all element-based, and it's still the most prevalent one. But there's also something called as Canva Kit, which is nothing but Canvas and WebGL. I'm not going to be talking too much into it. Very high level. These are 2D pixel APIs where web developers can use to build amazing websites, which can be flexible, portable, and also performant too. Imagine if you want to create an application like Google Earth or Photoshop, right? You want the rich UI on the web, right? If you want to create that, you could use Canva. A lot of people are using Canva Kit now, but still HTML, CSS still provides. So these are the ways that you can do. Why am I talking about this, right? So traditionally, you have a user interface, you have the browser engine, and you have a rendering engine. This is where it comes into play. You have inside your browser, you can have this code as a HTML, CSS, or as a Canva Kit. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because in Flutter, you have the browser, and then you have at the top, you have your application, and then Flutter framework, which is an engine called Skia, right? Skia, in a very high level, it can convert all your native code, like your iOS and Android. It can convert it and make sure that they are compatible with those platforms. And for browser, Skia also supports these two ways of painting the pixels on the screen. Why am I saying this? It's because when you create a Flutter web app, Skia looks for it. Okay, this person is using on a mobile device, then it will render it in HTML. Because why? The downloadable size is smaller. But however, if you want a rich UI experience on a larger device, like a desktop or on a laptop browser, then it'll convert it as Canva Kit. So understand that it does it automatically, but you can also change these settings. This is something that I wanted to at a very high level wanted to touch base on this. So you have, again, Flutter, you have the Flutter SDK with all the widgets and packages, etc. You use Dart language, and then the engine that I was talking about compiles the native SDK. So on a super high level, and why use Flutter, right? If Flutter Web, especially, it's portable, it's beautiful, and because it can automatically switch devices for user experience. It's also fast, it is productive, and it's also open source, right? So what do you start with? I'm pretty sure that most of you here who are here, you would know how to install a Flutter SDK. Once you do that, you set the path. And when you run Flutter Doctor, I had everything on my device, but then you have to choose Chrome, which you can use it to build. Okay. So you create a Flutter application using Flutter create and the app name. And then when you want to run, you run Flutter run, and it'll ask you which device. If you add the flag -d Chrome, I think it'll pick up Chrome or whatever device you want it to run with. So when you do that, by default, you get this incremental application. So the project folder looks like you have the Android, you have iOS, and inside the lib main.dart as your entry point. And then you have this web folder, right? So note that we have a web folder, we have an index.html and a manifest, but we do not have a service worker, right? So we are going to make this to a progressive web app in a moment. How do we do that? We'll see. Then you have the dependencies where you add dependencies file, pubspec.yaml file where you can add dependencies. Like if you are trying to do social icons, I was trying to build something with social icons. I had to add it under here. So that's something that you would do. And when you do that, this is your main Dart. We will see the Dart path in a moment. And in Flutter, everything is a widget. You can create stateless widget and stateful widget. Stateless is something that the user does not interact. It's not dynamic, but stateful is dynamic and it changes. We'll be seeing a sign up form demo in a moment. There are common widgets, scaffold, which is a basic structure of a typical material design application. You will have container, everything is a widget, text, card, list view, column. We'll be seeing all those red ones that I've pointed out. We'll see it in the code in a moment. So okay, we have talked a lot about this. So web apps in Flutter, how are they? They are they're responsive in design, and then they render. Like I said, it chooses HTML or CanvasKit, and then there's a lot of plugin supports. And specifically for desktop or for your web application, you can also add keyboard interaction and mouse scroll, etc. So this way, it can also be accessible. So let's finally build it, right? How do we build it? Once you have a Flutter application and you say Flutter build web, it creates a web folder inside. And if you see inside this, there is earlier we did not have a service worker. Here we do have a service worker and we do have a manifest, right? Flutter converts this, it also adds these files. And if you go inside one of the files, it will show the script tab inside the HTML where it registers for the service worker. So now Firebase console, you create a project. Once you create a project, you would go on the left-hand side, you would use hosting because we're just going to host this application that we have created and run an audit on this page and see whether it's progressive web app compliant, right? So how do you do this? Once you log in, you install Firebase tools. Then inside your project folder, you go log in with Firebase and then you initialize. And make sure that when you do this, you have to it'll ask you for which folder. By default, it'll choose public, but we're not going to. We want that build web folder because all our manifest, HTML, and then service workers, everything is inside our build/web folder. So we want Firebase to pick that. And also it'll ask you, hey, do you want to configure it as a single page HTML? Because this is just a single page, you're just going to say yes. And make sure that you say no to other options that was given to you, because it'll override and you will not be able to host your application. So that way, once it does not override, it skips it. And once you're done, it's initialized for you. Once you do that, you say Firebase deploy, and your app is, ta-da, voila, your app is there. So, okay, I forgot the animations here. This is the application that we will be showing. First one is on the left, you have a sign-up page where we'll be building it, and then we'll make sure that inside the web folder, all these things are there, and then we'll have Firebase, and then your application will have an install icon. And this is the demo that I'm going to be showing. So we have the widget tree is like this. Your application, you have a sign-up page, you have a welcome page. And then inside the sign-up, there is a sign-up form, which is a stateful widget, and which has text fields and button. And the welcome page is, again, a stateless widget. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to stop sharing and then share another screen here. Just give me a moment. Your window. Let's check this guy. Okay. Cool. Can you guys see my screen now? Can you guys see my screen? Can you give me a thumbs up? Cool. Yes, cool. Here is the application that I deployed. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's start off with the code, right? So this is the application where, if you can see, it create, all you have to do is you have to type in a name. I'm going to say Deepa, and then I'm going to say women in Firebase, right? So note that when I do that, it's very faded, but then you can check it out. I'm going to send all these information to you. So the progress bar changes colors. So if I do this, and also the sign up button will also change color here. So I do something like this. So it just says the sign up button also changed. And then once I do this, it's going to animate, and then it's going to go to the welcome page, right? So here is the code for that. We have two. First we are creating the app. Then we have two stateless widget. One is the sign up screen, which was the earlier page, the blue color page, right? And it has a scaffold. If this thing runs, just give it a minute. It creates a scaffold, and when you basically create the structure of it, and it says that come on, run. Okay, it has a blue color background, and there's a box inside that, and inside the card widget, you're creating a sign up form. So this is the only part that is a stateful widget. The rest of them are all stateless. The welcome screen is again a stateless widget, which we are defining it inside this class. And then we are creating for this part, for sign up form, we are creating a stateful widget. And note that whenever you're creating stateful widget, you have to also make sure that you're overriding the state by using create state. So we are using create state here. So you are overriding. And also make sure that when we do this, it also we have to also set the state, right? So we have to let Flutter know that, hey, something changed. So make sure you look for those changes and then set it. So it's like if you have used other libraries like React, how does the virtual ROM automatically changes? Like it's something similar to it. So it just looks for those changes and changes it. So also we did have some animations at the bottom. Hang on. We build the context for this whole page. We have the field, first names, last name, and the username. And then somewhere around the lanes, I did have an animated progress indicator, which was at the top. So inside this, I have said, okay, for every field, make sure that it also has a function up there. It is looking for those, inside this for loop, it says that, hey, take up the value, and as long as, and make sure that the progress is updated with the controller's length, right? So you have this, and at the end, based on this, you would have the animations. The color changes. See, for example, it is tinted red right now. If I say Deepa, it changes to orange. And then if I go here, as it becomes yellow. And then if I say, okay, then it becomes green. So this is the animation that is here. And once you finally have it, you build the context for this. And when you click on sign up, it changes and moves to a different route, which we defined it at the top of the application here. So this is a very quick demo. The same thing, what I did was build it as a web application, and I have created a project here. Hopefully this thing works. I just did host it last night. Hopefully it works. So I have this application. I hosted it by running those commands, and here it is. Oh, come on. Show up. Let's do this. Okay, thank God. So we have this, and note that here I can install this, right? And also, if we go and look into the application, it should have a service worker, right? I generated those things, and it says that flutter.fire service worker, and I'm not sure if I can. Let me show you the code in VS Code too. So you have the service worker, you have the cache here. It says, oh yeah, pick up everything from. It does from index.html, get it from the manifest, all those icons. If you go see in the manifest, you have all these icons that we had it inside the manifest too. And this will also have it as a favicon at the top as well. So let's go ahead and run this application and see whether this is compatible, right? And it should also, when we analyze this page, it should go through the audit here, and let's see if it's compatible. I did build this earlier, the same thing with, and then I hosted it in other, okay, it says that it's still doing it, and cool, let's see. Okay, this one happens, you have to clear the cache and then reload it for this to be working. But then it does say on the right here that, hey, it did check for Lighthouse, did check for all these audit. It did check whether it's installable, whether it can register, and it has manifest, etc. And I also have a code lab for this whole thing where I explain every single step of this. But then the last step is not hosting in Firebase, but it's in some other hosting services. So if you want to take a look at it, you just want the code, but you want to host it later in Firebase, you can do that as well. I am going to swap here and go to my slides real quick. Not the enter window. Okay, cool. This one. So we saw the demo, and we talked a lot about service workers, app manifest, and we talked about Flutter Web architecture. Finally, we built and Firebase and hosted in Firebase, right? We built the app in Flutter, but we hosted it in Firebase. So we saw the demo. And if you are somebody who is new to Progressive Web App, I have a basic YouTube video for how do you get started with the Progressive Web App. And I have a bunch of PWA APIs, Progressive Web App APIs that are supported. I have some articles about it. You can learn through that as well. And where can you take your next steps to, right? You can start working with server-side rendering, real-time data. You can make use of Firebase's database services too. And like Renuka said, you can use plugins, and you can try to use authentication, and also learn about service work, advanced caching methodologies in service workers, and how do you automate service worker using Workbox. And you can also use those advanced APIs that I was talking about. There is a lot of support available for Chrome, but again, there are some hiccups with iOS and Mac OS for sure. So I have code labs here for both Flutter and Progressive Web App. The main thing here is to build it as a, oh, I forgot to show that VS Code, which I'll show it in a minute. So we have a Flutter Forward Extended event coming up in GDG San Jose. We'll be doing a workshop on how to build your own Linktree clone. And it's a hybrid event. Please do join us if you can. And once again, my name is Deepa. I'm going to leave this slide open. And thank you so much for your time. And also,